Mr. Frank Ifield, welcome to this interview.
Well, thank you, Drongo. I hope you get some good questions there.
Now, Frank, you were born in England.
Yep.
Whereabouts?
I was born in Coventry, and born in Coventry just before the war started, actually. I was born in 1937, and the war started when I was about 3 years old. And we moved out of Coventry, then moved down to London. It was a bit like jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. Yeah. But when I moved to London, I was around about 5 or 6 years old, and the war was really full on at that point. And because it used to break up all the schoolwork, so we had, as a school, we had to go over into the air raid shelters to get away from the bombing.
Oh, okay.
And it was there that I used to look forward to it. Yeah, no, because the reason was I used to stand up on a box and I'd lead the whole school in community singing. And that was my first foray into show business. So from that moment, which was, as I say, was about 5 or 6 years old, I knew that that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I really did enjoy the feeling of just standing up in front of a crowd and singing with them, you know. And I don't know where I got the job. I like to think it was because I had a good voice. I think it's more that I had a loud voice, because I could be heard over the top of the bombs. But anyway, it inspired me, and that was what it was all about. And from there, that inspiration then, because once the war stopped, I thought, well, where am I going to get the inspiration now? Well, it still came, because I remember I was listening to BBC Radio, because that's what we had at the time, BBC Radio. And there was a program on that called Big Bill Campbell and his Rocky Mountaineers. And it was like a country music program, a Canadian country music program. And on that program, I heard a girl yodeling. She sang a thing called I Miss My Swiss misses me. Good song. Yeah, I must tell my mate to sing that. Yeah, yeah. Wayne, mark that one down, that'll be good for you. Right? Anyway, that was the first time I'd heard yodeling. And I thought, hey, I might be able to do this. And I tried it out quietly, because there's nothing worse than going out and bursting out with it and you can't do it. You know what I mean? So I thought I'd try it out, and I thought, yeah, I feel fairly comfortable with this. Now, I was about, I'd be 8, and I got to working with what do you call it, the milk round. Yep. I was just helping out on the milk round, earning some pocket money. And I thought, this is the ideal opportunity. It was a Sunday morning, very early in the morning, and there was nobody around. I thought, I'm not going to be bothering anybody. Put the milk down and lit forth the yodel. Well, all the lights came up all over the place. Everybody think, what the hell's going on here? Stones are in throat. But that was it. It was the first time I used the yodel. So by the time I got over to Australia, because I must tell you, both my parents were Australian.
I was going to ask that question.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Well, both of them were Australian. My dad was born in San Souci, my mum was born in Mosman. So they went overseas to further my father's career as an engineer. Yep. And during those war years, of course, he was very much involved with hush-hush work. He was working for a company called Joseph Lucas, but it was all hush-hush because I never knew what it was all about. And he was actually working on the fuel pumps for Jetcraft. Oh. And he was the one who, the first time they got the jet up in the air with it was on, gosh, what was it called? The Gloucester Meteor. And it was in 1954, yep. And it was the Gloucester Meteor, and that took off, and it broke the speed record of over 600 miles an hour. Huh. So my dad was responsible for taking us in, to some degree, into the sort of jet age, really.
And talking about your father, I believe that your grandfather was in the entertainment business.
Yes, he was. And that happened the minute we got back to Australia. My dad hadn't got a house for us, so he had to look around. Yep. So he put us, I'm saying us, because at this stage there are 8, and there's 7 boys in the family. Right? Imagine what that was like, landing in Sydney with 7 boys. So 7 of us and my mum went up to live with my granddad for a time while my dad was looking for a house. And that to me was just sheer joy. You know, to me, he was the personification of the great Australian pioneer. I loved him. We followed him everywhere, and he was like the Pied Piper. And showed us everything we needed to know about Australia. We learned everything there was to know about Australia within 2 weeks. It was wonderful. We followed him everywhere. And then he heard me do yodel, because we were all doing our party pieces. And I did my yodel, you see, with my ukulele. And he said, hey, he said, Frank, he said, I don't know whether you realise it. He said, I was in show business. Well, I mean, I said, what? What were you doing? And he said he was playing the part of Mr. Interlocutor with the minstrel shows, and he was touring back in the days of Cobb and Co, touring all over New South Wales. And he was a star. He was Mr. Interlocutor, the leader. And he could tap dance, and he sang songs to me. And I've learned several of those songs, and I put them onto record as well. But just hearing him, just sort of, he was magic. You know, and he inspired me so much, you know, because every time I sang, he just said, yeah, that's great, you know. And he was really behind me. So that inspiration led me even more to wanting to learn the Australian side of what the music was that I was listening to in England.
In England.
So I listened to radio, what was it, 2KA, The Voice of the Mountains. And it was a program on that in the early hours of the morning, and it was called Hillbilly Half Hour. Yeah. So the music was known as hillbilly in those days, right? And on that, I heard people like, I heard the American artists like, you know, obviously Hank Williams at that stage. Yeah. Then there were people like, Slim Dusty was already going then, but you got Tex Morton, Buddy Williams, and you had Smokey Dawson. And this is where I got to hear these people, you know. And the lovely thing about it was, every one of them yodeled. And I thought, that was why I had to learn the yodeling. Yeah, and what better place to do the yodeling than down in the bush.
So your first instrument was the actual ukulele?
Yeah, I had that bought for me before I left England. Yes. Because my dad knew that I was interested in playing something, so he bought me what he thought was a guitar. It's probably because that's all he could afford, so he bought me this ukulele. So that ukulele was with me for several years, until my gran, actually, who was living with us by this time, my gran had saved up the money saved her money up from her war widow's pension to buy me my first guitar. I'll never forget that. And I called my first guitar Betsy after her. Yeah, it was a small guitar with a palm tree in it. Oh, okay. It was black with a palm tree. I don't remember it ever having a name. That's why I gave it a name. But it did. It sounded great. But it was only a small guitar, not a really big one. Yeah. But I learned to play on that, and that was what accompanied me right the way through then with everything I did. Because the thing was, by this time we were living in Dural. Yep. It's a little remote village outside of Sydney. It's only about 30 miles north of Sydney, but it's really like an outpost. Thank you. I'll ring you back. So what happened was, going to school there, I took my ukulele, and I used to sing some of the songs I'd heard on 2KA. And the lads all got together and got around me and during the playtime, they enjoyed what they heard. And the headmaster heard me, you see, and he came over to me and he said, Frank, he said, that's very good. He said, he came with this book, and it's a book of poetry. And he said, look, I want you to take this book of Australian poetry home with you. This will be your homework. I want you to just take any poem you want and put your own tune to it and bring it in and sing it to the class. I thought, homework? That's just that's not homework, that's love. And so I did that, and I did that on a regular basis, and he encouraged me like that, and how good was that? I was up there in the front of the class at least once a week, singing a new song that I'd taken from the poetry. And of course, by that then, I'd become aware of the beauty of Australian poetry and what Australia had to offer in song. Plus the fact that it taught me to put tunes to things, original tunes to things.
Oh, okay.
So he was a very, very clever teacher, he really was. And because he probably knew that I wasn't going to be anything specifically, but he knew that I would be an entertainer. I don't know why, but yeah. And I learned a lot by watching him. That's the other thing. I found the subjects that I wasn't interested in, but the subject that he wasn't really that fascinated with either. Because he used to teach all the classes, and I think there were about 4 classes of kids at one time he'd teach. Pretty good going when you think about it. But he'd stand up there and he'd say, go into mathematics, and he would drift like this, and I'd be nodding like this, and I'd be drawing Mickey Mouses or something on the paper because he lost me. Yeah. But the minute he got into poetry, he was like that, right in front of me, even though the same distance away, because my interest in him and his interest in the subject, he was right here. And I learned a lesson by that. I thought, yeah, when I'm on the stage, if I'm passionate in what I'm doing, you're going to be sitting right in front of me. Yeah, every person out there. And this is what happened, and it did work. Hey, can I tell you something? Not many people know this. I went up to Hornsby Pacific Cabaret, where I did my first concert. And so I did my first concert. I got myself onto working with Tim McNamara.
Yeah.
Because I was a fan of Tim's, and I followed him everywhere. I thought he was great, And I went down to see him where people were getting autographs. And I got up to, and I was about to ask him, can I go on his show? And he just signed something and said, right next to it. I thought, I didn't get a chance to talk to him, So I knew he was up at Hornsby.
Yep.
So I just turned up at Hornsby, and I bailed him up, and I said, Tim, I'd like to sing on your show. And he said, oh, I can't wait. He said, I've got too much to think about. So anyway, I thought that was a bit of a brush off. Now, this is a local area to me, bear in mind. So I went to see his brother, who was Tommy Mac. Now, Tommy Mac was the comedian, plus he sang as well. And he was the one who, did the whole of the show. So he said, I'll have a listen to you. And I sang him a few songs. He said, yeah, he says, I like what you're doing. He said, I'll tell you what, you wait in the wings with a guitar at the ready there. And he said, any time I get a moment, I'll put you on. That sounds good to me. So I stood there watching the whole show, and fair enough. Nola Hurst was supposed to be on. Do you remember Nola Hurst? Yeah. And she was supposed to be on, and she wasn't anywhere to be found. Oh. So he was about to introduce her, and she wasn't there. So then he turned around and said, no, he said, we're going to introduce you to a local guy. I want you to have a listen to him. There's young Frank Ifield. Now, when I walked out there, I remember singing Hank Snow's song that I had, which was called Golden Rocket. Now, that is a tongue twister. I sang it about 3 times the speed. I got through it with all the nerves in the world. And the audience dutifully applauded. But when I realised it after a while, of course they did. They were all my mates. They were people that went to school with. Loads of them in the audience. I knew everybody. And so, obviously, they gave me a great welcome. And I sang about 3 songs, and they were still encoring it, I could see at the side of the stage, see Tim McNamara saying, get off, get off. So I got off the other side. I wasn't going to come off this side. I went off the other side of the stage. And it continued. But instead of sacking me, he came over to me and he says, all right, he said, you did a good show there. He said, but you listen to me next time. When I tell you to get off, you must get off. So, but I thought, I said, the audience were wanting more. He says, doesn't matter. We've got to keep the thing in time and all that. Anyway, he said, look, I'd like you to tour with me. He said, I'll give you 1 guinea a show. I thought, yeah, I've made it. A guinea a show. So every time I went on stage, I sang these songs and what have you. I got my guinea. Most of it went on getting my audiences in, my mum and my dad and my brothers, with all that coming to see my shows, and I was paying for it all. He said, there wasn't much left of a guinea.
I wouldn't think so.
Believe me, it didn't go that far. So then the clincher was when he expected me to get only a guinea to go up to Newcastle or to go down to Wollongong. Yeah. And now I'm having to pay train fares to get to these places. I'm still going to school, you know. So I said to him, Tim, I'd like a raise. Can you give me 2 guineas? And he sacked me there on the spot. I was thankful though that when he sacked me, that opened the doors for a lot of other people to get in there. Not the least of which was his ex-wife.
Oh.
And she put a show on called The McNamara Show and put me very high up in the bill. So that was good.
When did you actually record your first discs?
Oh, that came about because at this same time, I'm telling you, when I was doing that show,
Yep.
I did my first radio show, which was Australia's Amateur Hour. How that happened, can I just go back a little bit and explain to you? I was doing various, sort of contests around the place, you know, amateur contests. And one of the places I went to was North Ryde, and they had a place there called Eden Park, and it was on a Sunday. And I remember singing some songs on that. And this particular night, I won the contest, and I got about £5. You know, I mean, I was a millionaire. Stuck this £5 in my pocket. I'm well away. But I then looked across, and I was on with Rick and Thel Carey.
Yeah.
So I went up to Rick and Thel. I said, "Look, how do you get onto record?" And she said, "Oh, well, the first thing you've got to do is to go and get some music, you know, some original music. You're better off going down to see Alan Crawford of Southern Music." Now, okay, so he said, "Well, make sure you ring first, you know, because he's a busy man and it's difficult." But I couldn't do all that, and I had to tell everybody I was going to do it, and I was going to play hooky from school. So I thought, well, the next day, there's no like, don't let grass grow under your feet. The next day was a Monday, so I dashed into town to see this Alan Crawford. And I walked in the room, and I said, I'm here to see Mr. Alan Crawford. He said, "Yes, I'm Alan Crawford." He said, "How can I help you?" And I said, "Well, some friends of yours, Rick and Thel Carey, have sent me in to see if I can get onto record, you say, and I need some music." He said, "Well, look, I can't hand music willy-nilly to anybody who comes up the street with a story, you know. I mean, you've got to be on record." So I told him a white lie, and I said, "I am on record." He said, "Oh, that makes a difference to who you're with." And I thought, well, all the records I was buying were all on Regal Zonophone. So I said, "I'm on Regal Zonophone." And he turned to his secretary, he said, "That's EMI. Would you give a call to Ron Wills from EMI?" Anyway, she tries to say, "I'll check your story." And I thought, oh God. Anyway, so they ran through, and Ron Wills was out to lunch. Thank God. And then they turned around to me and they said, "Oh, well, Ron Wills is out to lunch at the moment, but I'll check your story later. Meanwhile, you can have a listen to them, but you mustn't take the records away. Have a listen to some new ones that have come in." And he said, "I'll leave you with my secretary to help you out." And off he went, because he was going out for lunch, you see. So then I listened to these songs, and it didn't take very long. The first one I heard was a very sad song called "Did You See My Daddy Over There?" "Did You See My Daddy Over There?" And I liked it. It was a good story song, but it was sung by an old guy singing the song. And I thought, my theatrical thing stuck out, and I thought, hey, I could be this kid looking around when I'm singing the song. You know, it makes a difference, you know, from an audience point of view. So I liked the song from that. And I had a very quick ear for music in those days, which I haven't got these days, not quite the same. But I learned the song, and I got into the train to go over to Homebush to catch Ron Wills before he came back from lunch. And on the way, I'm rehearsing the song in my in this quiet, train. and I'm waiting to get to Homebush. By the time I got to Homebush, I got to get out, and I realised that by this time the carriage was full of people. And they gave me a standing ovation as I walked out. Anyway, I drove over to Ryan, and I got there just before Rod Wells came back. And the secretary said, "Oh, he's still out to lunch. But had you made an appointment?" I said, "Well, we tried to ring earlier." Oh, she said, "Yes, Mr. Anna Crawford rang." I answered the call. He said, "Well, you go and sit down over there, and I'll give you a nod as soon as he comes through the door." I said, "Well, how can I recognise him?" He said, "You can't miss him. He's about 6'3" tall." Yeah. So I watched him. This first bloke who walked through there, and I had to duck. It had to be him, so I dashed over. "Excuse me, Mr. Wells. My name is Frank Ifield. I just came over from Alan Crawford, who sent me over here with some music with a view to recording." Now, he was very amenable, very nice. I think he'd had a liquid lunch. And he said to me, come in, and he said, come in, and he took me into the listening booth, and he heard me sing this song, and he was very impressed. He said, "But let's face a couple of facts here." He said, "Number one," he said, "is you're not over 21. You can't be." I said, "No, I'm not. I'm only, I'm 14. So he said, "Okay." He said, "Then you'll need your parents' permission." I said, "That's no problem. Yes, it'll be all right. They'll sign anything. And for us to put you under contract," he said, "the first thing you need," he said, "now think about this because it's going to be a difficult one. You need to have a radio program that covers the whole country. Otherwise we wouldn't be interested in releasing the record because you've got to have that coverage." Yeah. I said, "I've got one." And he said, "Australia's Amateur Hour." He said, "Oh yeah," he said, that's a good one. When's that on?" And I said, "Well, I haven't got the date fixed yet, but I'll ring him back as soon as I know." I got out of there, dashed over back to town, up to the offices of the Australia's Amateur Hour, to Terry Deer, yeah. Knowing full well if I told him I was recording, he'd get me on, which I did. I sang this song. And I didn't just do that one, because I did a thing with yodeling in it, this one. It was called "There's a Love Knot in My Lariat."
Lariat, yes.
And I sang this thing to him. And he says, "Okay," he said, that's good." He said, "We'll put you on." I said, and he gave me the date. And I said, "I'm sorry to ask you this, but what a cheek. Can you read through to Mr. Wells because he's waiting to hear what date I'm on?" And he said, "Yeah, I'll do that." I thought, well, that's better than coming from me, isn't it? So I'm on the way home with the train, and I'm thinking to myself, how the hell did I pull that off? I'm a 14-year-old chorus kid coming from school, playing hooky, and I've landed all those three things, major things in a person's life, all in one day. And it all came off, because once I did the Amateur Hour, so the record came off too. In 1956, the whole music scene started to change. Bill Haley had come in and done Rock Around the Clock, and the whole scene began to change drastically. I was happy about this, because now, although I've been making records for a long period of time, now we're moving into an era which is what I like, and the country is accepting it, called rockabilly, when we had the people like Elvis Presley, obviously, Jim Vincent, and name them, they all came out and they were rockabilly artists. Now they were performing the sort of things that I wanted to do, and I couldn't wait to do it. Difficult it was, I was precluded from doing all that because I had to go and do my national service, right? And when I did my national service, I had nothing in the books whatsoever when I came out, and I thought, yeah, that was a waste of time playing soldiers while it was all beginning to happen, And I could see all these new names coming up, but I was getting nowhere. And I came home, and phone rang, and they said, "Could you come down and do what they call a screen test?" This was in Surrey Hills. And I said, "Yeah, sure." So off I went. And I thought, I didn't know what it was all about, but it doesn't matter, they'll explain to me when I got there. I haven't got anything else to do anyway. So I get out of the car with my guitar around the neck, and I walked in, and they said, well, come straight up because we've got the cameras all lined up, so, and what are you going to sing? And I said, well, does it matter? And yes, it does, okay. And sing something nice and bright. So they put the camera on me, and I went into a nice bright song, right? Finished the song, and I said, how was that? And they were looking at one another. He said, you passed. I said, passed what? Yeah, you passed the test. The test for what? Television. What's television? Well, television hadn't started yet. You know, they'd done tests for television, but actual television hadn't started. It didn't start until that Sunday after I did this. This was done on the Friday. Friday. And they wanted me to come in on the Tuesday because the show was going to go out on the Wednesday, and it was the first live show to go out, because all the rest of the shows they did on the Sunday were things that came in from America, you know, I Love Lucy's and things like that, you know. So we rehearsed. I remember going out there and rehearsing with this band. Alf Luciani was on the accordion, and I had to go on a bass, very good bass player. And he also played fiddle as well, yeah. So that was the band, but not much of a band, but that was it. And me playing guitar. I got a proper guitar then. And it was called Campfire Favourites, the show, right? Now, on the opening day, when we went there for rehearsal, we were going to go straight from that into doing the opening live show. And I remember Chuck Faulkner was reading the news, and after the news, they gave me the countdown to start, and I started the song, the first song. We went into it, and it all went like clockwork, because we rehearsed it so much, it went like clockwork. But during the day when I was doing all this rehearsal, I realized the rehearsal really wasn't for me. It was for the lighting guys, it was for the sound guys. None of them had done it before. Yeah, for cameras, yeah, dollying in and coming back, you know, and they had to have all the timing had to be done right. So I was part of a team now. I realized how much, I was part of a team, which I never had before. You were chucked on stage and you did your own thing, yeah, and you lived or died by what you did. But this was a team, teamwork, you know, and I enjoyed that. And at the finish of it all, they were all jumping up and down because they were all feeling very proud of themselves because it all worked very well. It went smoothly, you know, which is not always the case. Things don't always work that smoothly, but they did on this occasion. And then they came to me and they said, well, congratulations, Frank. And I said, what for? And the show went well, yeah. And he said, not only did it go well, we're going to give you a 13 weeks television series. So they gave me the first series on television, yeah. And this show, now that was good for me because once a week the face was being seen and everything else. So anyway, I'm driving on the way home, and I'm thinking to myself, who had television? Who was watching it? Because we never had television. Yeah, who was watching it? I don't think anybody would have television at that time when we first went out. I got home, pulled the car up, and Mum came to the kitchen door and she said, great, Frank. She said, that was a great show. I said, how did you know? She said, we went down, it was sort of outside the shop, and watched it coming through the shop. She said, we weren't the only ones there was lots of people, you got a good crowd. So, and my brother said, he said, you did such a good job. He said, and they did a little close-up on you, and you were doing I Believe, I think it was. And they did a real close-up of it. So close that I could see right up your nose. It's funny when you think about it. Brothers can keep you on the straight and narrow there. But that went on for a long time. That was the television. And being on television then was the big thing. That was the thing that really, every artist wanted to be able to put up on what they call the marquee. Yeah. Your name, television artist, or first of all it's recording artist, television artist, and then go radio artist, anything, so people could identify with it. Now they could put television artist. It made a lot of difference.
Most definitely. Now, I think prior to this, You appeared on a few shows around Sydney, including Reg Lindsay.
Yes, I worked quite a bit with Reg.
Oh, okay.
Reg and I were sort of contemporaries. We started off pretty much at the same sort of time. When I was starting with Regal Zonophone, he was starting with Regal. I think he was probably a little bit before me, but it's pretty much the same. So we came in different directions, but we were working on shows together a lot of the time, you know. And there was one show I do remember when I was working with Reg and Slim. They were the two tops of the bill. And I felt, you know, now my profile had risen so much. I was only 16, no, I don't think it was that, 15 probably. But my profile had risen so much that I was the next on the bill, yeah. So, and I had to open the second half of the show. I must tell you this. And so I was standing up on the side of the stage ready to go on, you know, because as soon as the announcement was made, I was ready to go. And I'm keeping an ear out for what they're saying. And they had the Lord Mayor out there who was saying, thank you very much for coming along and this, that and the other and doing all that, you know. And meanwhile, I'm talking to Slim Dusty, and Slim's talking to me. And I'm sort of keeping half an ear open, and I'm talking to Slim. And suddenly, the Lord Mayor suddenly says, so you see, ladies and gentlemen, frankly, I feel that, and you know, and he went over his conversation. I thought he said, frankly, I feel. And so I rushed out there, and I'm standing there, and everybody's looking at me thinking, what's going on? I'll never forget that. That was at Auburn Town Hall. Great faux pas. That's a good way to start your first appearance.
So did you appear on the showboat Kalang?
Oh, many times.
Many times.
Yeah. Actually, the showboat Kalang got me right from the as soon as I came out of Australia's amateur hour.
Oh, okay.
I was getting bookings on the Kalang. I got one or two sort of incidental shows, but then Mr. Flockhart, was the man who ran the whole thing, started to put me on all sorts of shows. I was doing country shows,
yep.
And then I was doing all the other shows as well. It didn't have to be country. And then I was doing a lot of shows with Jimmy Little. We were doing a show together, which we used to do on the showboat as well. So I would probably get in the region of about 4 or 5 shows a week out of that. Yeah, sometimes more. The first time they did Brian Henderson's show at Bandstand, I was on that with Cole Joy and the Joy Boys and Pee Wee and all that sort of stuff. But we were a team working all the time. And then there was a couple of times when Brian got ill, and then I was asked to compare it. You know, so that was very good training for me. And then I met a man. His name was Peter Gormley, who'd been watching my show evidently, and he said to me, "Look," he said, "I'm very interested in managing you." And I said, "What are your qualifications?" He said, "Well, this is I'm the Hoots theatre representative from Wagga Wagga." And I thought, what's that got to do with handling of artists? I don't know. He said, look, I'm not going to sit here and brag about myself. He said, you want to know any information? Ask people, you know. But he said, I would really like to do it. And if you want to come with me and have me as your manager, we must be prepared to go to England. Now, I thought, he's been reading my brain, because I've been, you know, thinking very, very seriously of going to England and trying my luck out there, because I've always been a theatre man,
yeah.
And I've been trying for the Tivoli, and I could never get a job at the Tivoli, so I thought, sod them, I'll go to the Palladium. And so I've been dreaming about playing the Palladium, you know? And I thought, well, you can't play the Palladium unless you're in London, you know? So he said the right thing there. He said, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of go over to Britain to start the ball rolling, and you'll stay back here and earn the money so that we can, you know, live in the time I'm away. So that was good. And I thought, from my point of view, before I went, I just needed to have a couple of things to do that spread my wings into areas that people don't know me, you see. So I then started to do shows, a lot of shows in Melbourne, and I hadn't worked a lot in Melbourne, so that was good to experience down there. And I worked with Helen Reddy's father, Max Reddy. So, and with Helen, because she was only a young girl at the time, and we were singing together. But then when I came back to Sydney, I was approached by an agency who said to me, "Would you like to do it's a major festival all over New Zealand?" And I thought, well, that's good. I've never been to New Zealand. They probably don't even know me. That's fabulous. That's exactly what I want to do. And I had to do everything from jazz to country to pop, every sort of music in these festivals, because the festivals all featured something different. Opera even. I had to do an opera. Well, so I took it on, yeah, and I went out there and I did that long tour. And boy, that was a good tour, you know. And I got across on everything that I had to do, including the opera. I sang things like My Prayer and all those sort of things, the big songs at the time. And it was acceptable. With the big orchestra, it sounded wonderful. So anyway, having finished that, I thought, now I'm ready now. And I got back to Sydney, and they said, people were approaching me in Sydney saying, "Can you do our show? We want to do a farewell show on you." The word had got around that I was going to go to England. Then every show I did from there on was a farewell show.
Oh, okay.
I did so many darn farewell shows. I mean, I did more farewell shows than Gladys Moncrief did, I can tell you. So, meanwhile, I haven't heard anything from Peter Gormley about coming over to England. So my dad came to me, he says, "Frank," he said, "I think you ought to make tracks and go over to England." I said, "Well, I've been waiting to hear from Peter Gormley." He said, "Forget about that." He said, "You'll have to go, because I'm getting fed up with the amount of farewell shows you're getting." Yeah. I mean, even the radio shows were becoming farewell shows. So anyway, I said, "Well, I'm ready to go. I'm anxious to go." So he said, "Okay." He said, "The reason I'm mentioning it to you," he said, you know my pumps, fuel pumps are on the jet craft." He said, "They got the inaugural Comet flight between Sydney and London." And he said, "I'd like you to be on that." He said, "I can wangle it for you." And I thought, why not? That sounds great to me. So that was what I did. I went on that first flight, from Sydney to London. And so that was on. We left here in, I think it was the 3rd of November. And we got there on Guy Fawkes night anyway. And I thought that was London making a glory welcome to me, you know, all the sky, like, and this and then, it was Guy Fawkes night. Who's he? Yeah, so that's how it happened.
That's how it happened. Well, Frank, thank you for this part 1 interview, and we're in London now.
Yeah.
So part 2, we'll start from London and back to Australia.
Yeah, that sounds good fun.
No, well...
I mustn't forget the American side too, that's part 3.
Well, we'll have to slot it in. No, thank you very much, Frank, for this interview.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much, Drunk. It's good to see you.
Thank you.